Injured or not, the Cleveland Browns have a ball game they absolutely have to win on Sunday. Crossover Thursday, your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this crossover Thursday Locked On Bears, Locked On Browns podcast. I'm Lorin Cox from Locked On Bears, here with Jeff Lloyd from Locked On Browns. Our crossover Thursday podcast is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Jeff, as we look ahead to this Bears-Browns matchup, it seems like the biggest story coming out of Cleveland is the injury report that looks longer than maybe the starting lineup. I mean, I've seen so many guys on Wednesday are DNPs. Some of them are just kind of hanging out, but a couple of guys now out for the season. What's sort of like the bigger picture update on where the Browns are health-wise here?
Well, this is actually, believe it or not, it's a little lighter than you would think because some guys did go on the IR, so they're not going to be on that list. Obviously, look, it's been a really, really tough, difficult, few days here. Juwan Jones, nobody knew what happened. All we knew was Friday was a reoccurrence of a knee injury. He wasn't going to play. And granted, only an MCL. So that huge. Jedrick Wills, and it's tough for Jedrick Wills because he's been a big part of this team, and you can't pick on the man himself. The guy has gutted out a ton of injuries for this team, and he was trying to gut it out. This would have been week 6 of, trying to get this knee stronger enough to maybe just say, hey, we only got to play 5, 6, 7 more games. But the knee wasn't responding. The docs had to step in and say, hey, look, the effort was there, but, long-term interest, this isn't the best thing for you. Grant Delpit collides with Myles Garrett. Worst thing in the world. Obviously, a guy, agrees verbally to a 3-year, $36 million contract. 3 hours later, he's down, injured. His regular season is over. He's on IR with the designation to return. Okoronkwo, and this is the latest string of pecks as they lost Maurice Hurst yesterday to a peck. His year is over. Okoronkwo, same thing. He's dealing with it. The Browns are hopeful there's a chance he can still play this year. Obviously, no part of this week. They're piling up fast. They are, Lorin. And look, nobody's crying for anybody at injuries this time of year. It is what it is. It has nothing to do with the Browns having an earlier bye week. It's not. It's just it's what it is. Sometimes you just run a string of bad luck. But your offensive line, you still have, Joel Bitonio, you still have Wyatt Teller. Jerron Crushton, this is going to be a 6th start for the Browns, and he may not have been great this past Sunday. This guy was starting tackle for this team when they beat the Ravens on the road, when they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Starting tackle for this team who did just beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. James Hudson has been here he's now the right tackle. He has been here with this team for a while. He's better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. Joe Flacco's been good. You're getting production out of the running game. The passing game has gotten better than it ever has, maybe at any point of the Kevin Stefanski regime, because Joe Flacco brings a verticality to it. So yeah, the Browns are banged up, but there's no reason to believe that, this is a car on the side of the road that's rolling on a couple of rims. There's still some really good talent on this team, and the expectation is to finish strong here and finish in the playoffs.
I think Bears fans look at those Browns injuries, particularly at the offensive tackle spots, and see, all right, opportunity to really get after Joe Flacco. Montez Sweat's been playing really well for Chicago, but Yannick Ngakoue goes on injured reserve for them as well on Wednesday. So there's some injury concern there, but from your perspective, like, what is the level of concern there? The tackles, like you're saying, they've gotten the job done, sort of, but is it a messy getting the job done, or is there a level of confidence that even with the backups in there, things will be fine?
Well, look, there's a reason you pay Bill Callahan to coach your offensive line, and you pay him probably one of the top salaries of an offensive. And, you expect him to be able to coach guys up. Jerron Christian being a free agent was kind of a coup for the Browns. A guy not a lot of people know or a lot of people talk about, but he's already been with Bill Callahan. So it was a seamless transition to come into that locker room. So he stepped into the left tackle job. Inconsistent at times, yes. Also, maybe now some teams have some film on him, so maybe there's some tendencies to pick up, obviously. James Hudson, really, just my opinion, looks in is built more like a guy that should play on the inside. But this team does have Joe Bitonio. This team has Wyatt Teller. Those jobs are completely secure by now. But I think they're fairly doing a pretty good job. And it is crazy to say that when you're talking about your fourth and fifth offensive tackle, because a lot of people forget for the Browns that John Conklin went gone week 1. So to say that, you're an 8-5 team and you are playing with your fourth and fifth offensive tackles, it does seem a little bit crazy on its face. But no, I wouldn't say you give them more than they're not killing them. You know what I'm saying? They're playing better than that. But you have to also take in the expectation. Are they playing to better than expectation of any team that would be starting a fourth and fifth offensive tackle? Yeah, they're playing better than that. This team needs to run the ball better. It's just this time of year. The games are tighter. You got to close them out. And this has kind of been one thing the Browns have always been good at during the Stefanski regime. And I think that's where maybe and maybe it is cohesion. And maybe it is just, you don't have 5 guys that are that used to working together, but it's the time of the year. It's December, and it's very imperative that they can get some sort of, solid run game going, because Joe Flacco, it's been great for 2 weeks. But you also can't expect Joe Flacco is just going to come in here at 38 years old and start playing week in, week out at a level of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. It just doesn't seem, obviously, something that is sustainable.
It's interesting because the Bears have been one of the better run defenses in the NFL for the majority of this season. But then just last week against the Detroit Lions, kind of had their first big, pretty well run on by an opponent, but still otherwise shut down their offense. It was this weird dichotomy where it was the most vulnerable their run defense had looked all season, and yet one of the best games their defense as a whole had played all season, because they were really locked down in coverage, good pass rush getting after the quarterback. It's kind of a reverse of what they've been a lot of this year. So I am curious how that dynamic plays out with the Browns, of how much they're going to lean into that, and whether or not the Bears can bounce back in that area. I also see a similar sort of question for Chicago on the other side. Is everyone's got the PTSD from the last time the Bears and Browns played, when Myles Garrett got after Justin Fields and made his life hell in his first real big boy start in the NFL. And now it's well, we meet again, old friend. I've grown a lot since the last time we both played, but at the same time, it's not all Fields. There's a different left tackle in this matchup, a different right tackle, a rookie on that side. And, Fields does still sometimes hold on to the ball too long, and does sometimes give pass rushers extra time to get after him. And, it's pretty easy for him to dodge, some no-name guys on the Detroit Lions defensive line, not named Aiden Hutchinson, when, they've been going up against some pass rushers that don't have that elite talent. And Myles Garrett feels like someone that's a little bit harder to just, sidestep in the pocket. And Field seemed to sort of learn that the first time, but it's been a couple of years, and maybe that confidence comes back a little bit more. And safe to assume we're seeing the same level of dominance from Myles Garrett and the rest of that Browns defensive line up to this point, despite the injuries around them.
Well, Myles, the production hasn't been there, and there was obviously the big scare in Denver with the shoulder. Relatively ineffective against the Rams. Did get some pressures last week. I believe he was PFF's highest pressure-rated performer of the week. But when Myles goes, and that was what the Browns' plan was as far as bringing on all these defensive linemen, was he's going to make everybody's life easier. Maurice Hurst was a name that was pretty much forgotten as far as the NFL is concerned, and he was really, really effective. The Browns will go, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. Their next 2 DNs, Alex Wright was a 3rd-round pick. A lot of people liked Alex Wright 2 years ago out of UAB. They're most likely to come off the practice squad as Isaiah McGuire. He was a 4th-round pick this year. It's not like, you're pulling, flyers or undersized guys. The Browns drafted and addressed this defensive line big time. You lose Maurice Hurst at the defensive tackle position. The Browns haven't suited up Siaki Ika yet. He was a top 100 pick. And this is what I keep telling fans is, when is the last time the Browns, you normally got drafted by the Browns at the top 100? You were basically handed a starting gig, not can we even get you on a game day roster. So here's a guy that's fresh, obviously probably motivated, probably aggravated, agitated, waiting for this opportunity. And the Browns do like to play NASCAR. They like to play a lot of DNs in obvious passing situations. One of the reasons is obviously, athleticism at the quarterback position is just up as a whole. The other one is you play your 4 best pass rushers. So if that means the Browns can't use Maurice Hurst in this scenario, but they can use, obviously Alex Wright, or they can use an Isaiah McGuire. There's still a lot of talent there, but these things also fall on the coaching. And this is another reason why you hire a guy like Jim Schwartz. Hey, we got you enough. We can't guarantee that everybody's going to be here every week. You got to go at it. You got to scheme, things open, and hopefully Miles can continue, his athleticism. And look, even if it's not production, what was the old line, the old draft line, the famous one, disruption is production. And that is certainly something Myles Garrett has been providing.
Well, we've been focusing on the trenches quite a bit here because that's the big storyline entering this game for both teams. But coming up, we'll take a look at some of the other top matchups and most important players in this game that'll go really far in determining who's going to win and keep their playoff hopes trudging forward. That's coming up next on our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Browns. Our crossover Thursday is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides online therapy to help you be your best self. I always say, I go to the gym because I want my body to be at its best, not because my body is broken. And I go to therapy because I want my brain to be at its best, not because my brain is broken. And I think BetterHelp is a great way to get started if you've never done it before. If you've been thinking about it, BetterHelp's a great way to start because it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And you know what? If that first person you meet with is just not the right fit for you, that's okay. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Especially this time of season with the holiday season, it can be a wonderful time for a lot of people, and it can be a difficult time for a lot of people. And so if in this season of giving, you want to give yourself what you need, check out BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, as we continue our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Browns, Lorin Cox here with Jeff Lloyd. Jeff, I want to get into some of the top matchups here, not just in the trenches, where obviously a lot of things are, a lot of this game is going to be won and lost, but I'm particularly curious what you see as the plan for someone like DJ Moore when you lose Grant Delpit to an injury, taking that out of the safety position. And I know a guy like Denzel Ward is on the injury report limited with a shoulder. I'm assuming he's probably going to be good to go, but how do you see them trying to handle the Bears' number one weapon here, who is also on the injury report with an ankle injury he suffered against the Lions? But I think at this point, he finished the game with the injury last week, so he should be good to go, even if they take it really easy with him throughout the week.
And look, I mean, we're getting to the point now where it doesn't really matter if you're practicing. Can you get to Friday? Okay, good. Yeah, all right. We'll see you on Sunday. And I think a lot of time coaches at this point don't necessarily want to check in anyway. They don't want to know. Just you do what you got to do. Well, the Browns don't rotate corners. They don't switch corners. Everybody kind of plays on the sides they're on. With a player like DJ Moore, and he does line up, kind of all over the place. I think the Browns, if the matchup is for Greg Newsom's going to cover him. If the matchup is for Martin Emerson's going to cover him. If the matchup is Denzel Ward's going to cover him. And this is something that basically Jim Schwartz preached when he got here. He's like, I don't necessarily have to get too deep or too tricky or too deceiving anything I do here. He was very excited about this quarterback trio he has, and rightfully so. Denzel Ward did not play last week. 7 pass deflections between Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome, and 3 interceptions. These young kids can play. They can ball. They can cover. They play, and they really, really play well at home. And I'm sure both of them are, all of them are itching for a matchup like DJ Moore. They don't necessarily, try to necessarily take a guy away. It's so much that they have faith in their own ability. Martin Emerson last week, he's covering guys deep. He's, forcing Trevor Lawrence into a bad read. He's, jumping a route because Calvin Ridley didn't have his head around. Greg Newsome ran a deep route for a receiver and basically baited Trevor Lawrence into throwing it. These guys know what they're doing out there. And they've all been really, really good about the fact that it's not really hard for us. I mean, we got to cover for about 2.1 seconds because that's how effective most weeks the Browns defensive line has been. And I think they really, really are excited that they get to play a lot of man, and quarterbacks are either going down or they're forcing balls or they're throwing it before they need to or before they should. And it's giving them all opportunities to be playmakers. These guys absolutely love the system right now. And, they've obviously seen a bunch of good receivers this year, and they just seem to be relishing in the moment. And, the Browns are going to have, probably some conversations they're going to have here. Probably starting this spring, Greg Newsome would be eligible for a 5th-year option. Martin Emerson, unfortunately for Greg Newsome, it came in here as a 3rd-round pick and is probably the superior and starting player for the Browns are going to focus their, future on, along with Denzel Ward. But right now, it's a really, really good unit. And these guys, look, they get excited. They love a matchup. A guy like DJ Moore, they're excited about a matchup with DJ Moore.
Yeah, I imagine they're not going to back down from that. And certainly the Bears have some cornerbacks on their end that
No
really
doubt.
physical and don't like to back down from anybody, whether it's Jalen Johnson, who is really playing the best football of his career right now, or Tyreek Stevenson and Terrell Smith are the two rookies kind of rotating opposite him. They're also both physical cornerbacks who have some kind of ups and downs along the way. They'll jump a pass and make a great play in the ball, and sometimes they'll get kind of caught flat-footed in their tracks when a double moves on them. And it's the classic rookie cornerback. You live with it and you die with it. And there's
trial by fire
and some really bad. But I'm kind of curious how that ends up taking shape with Joe Flacco, right? In this offense, obviously a lot of balls going Amari Cooper's way, but it seemed to me looking back over the last game that certainly Flacco likes to take his deep shots, but it was a lot of like taking the check downs outside underneath. It's not necessarily check downs, but just kind of getting to the outside underneath player there and taking where the defense will give you some space and knowing then when to mix in your deep shots there. I don't know, from your perspective, does that promote more like a David and Njoku type game? Because it seemed like the two of them were kind of his go-to there. And is it about just getting something quick to Amari Cooper, or is it about like coming back to somebody like David Njoku as like, the security blanket who's just going to keep you alive and fight for some extra yards after the catch?
Well, I think the thing with David Njoku is, and he sees what all of us who follow the Browns and cover the team for as long as we have, and David has been here since I've started. David Miles Garrett came in the same draft class. That was when I started, here with Locked On covering. David Njoku is just an absolute freak of nature. He might be the most athletic tight end in the NFL. His skills are somewhat lesser than some of the best ones. The Mark Andrewses, obviously the Travis Kelce's. And there's really good David Njoku, like last week. Then there's David Njoku, who had a lapse of a couple of weeks where he was dropping a lot of balls. And this was something we haven't seen in years. And David did a really, really good job as far as improving himself. And, it's tough because it almost kind of came like it was a virus, like today you're sick, tomorrow your brother's sick, oh no, then mom's sick the next day. Because once David dropped one, then a wide receiver dropped one, then a running back dropped one, and it came this type of issue. But David is an exceptional player, and when David is in the zone, his name deserves to be mentioned with the top 5 tight ends in the NFL. And I think the thing with David is success keeps him going. So David gets hot, you get kind of a hot streak to go along with it. The vertical game, and this has been really big with Elijah Moore, because they brought him in and they tried to use him as this Percy Harvin type. And that's a great thing to do, Lorin. It really is. But if you're not scaring the daylights out of anybody as a wide receiver, nobody cares that he's lining up in the backfield. That's almost a win. Oh, well, if he's not going to beat us on a 9, I'd rather have him in the backfield. Yeah. And the thing is to go ahead and try to have him do those things, he needed to be more successful as a wide receiver. It was working out. Now he's just doing straight traditional wide receiver stuff. And what do you know? He's getting open. He always got open with the Jets. He never got the ball. He's always been open when he's here with the Browns. He didn't get the ball. Joe Flacco has taken this passing game from the 10 to 20 yard range just in 2 weeks. Probably the best I've seen it since maybe Baker Mayfield in his rookie year and parts of 2020. But Joe doesn't have a short arm. I mean, he's a long-armed, fireballing quarterback that doesn't normally transcend to, 3-yard slants or, tight end hooks over the middle. It translates to the 10+ yard passing game. And the Browns, that's probably what's been their biggest advantage with Joe coming in here is these are things that if you're scouting the Browns, it's not on film up until Joe Flacco. So teams now, they never threw it there. They never threw it there. Well, Joe Flacco is going to throw it there.
I have a feeling he's going to test these Bears, especially the young cornerbacks. Maybe not Jalen Johnson as much, but those.
My guess is they are going to steer well aware from number 33. Yes.
Because quite often a lot of these games, Tyreek Stevenson, if he's the starter, is the number 1 targeted defender in this Bear secondary. And I'm expecting a similar type of game plan in this one for the Cleveland Browns. But we'll go through what it might take for each of these teams to win and maybe go through some predictions for this game as well as we continue our Crossover Thursday Locked On Bears, Locked On Browns podcast. Our crossover is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. If you've never played with FanDuel before, now is a great time to get in on the action. New customers will get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So you bet $5 on any team straight up to win, not a spread, just straight up who's going to win. If you're correct, you'll get your winnings from your $5 bet plus $150 in bonus bets. So right now, Bears at Browns. The Browns are the favorites with a -184 money line. Bears are +154. You put $5, you get your pick right, you're getting 150 bonus bucks to play with it. FanDuel to bet on anything from there, like a 3-point Bears underdog road spread. Browns 3-point home favorites. And the over-under set at this game is just 37.5 points. Certainly FanDuel expecting a lower scoring game between these two teams. So if you've been thinking about giving FanDuel a try, there's no better time to get in on the action. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Jeff, as we wrap up our Bears-Browns crossover Thursday, what do you see? I mean, you talked a little bit about the running game and certainly making sure that the offensive line can hold up for Joe Flacco. Is that kind of the formula for Browns' victory here? Is not take the ball out of his hands, but just make life easy for him in that way and then trust your defense to get after Fields, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, you need to shorten games, and especially if the Browns are going to be down defensive players, you need to start shortening the games here a little bit. And, I mean, look, you had Jacksonville in the game till basically the last minute, and the Browns have been in so many 60-minute games this season. And as much as, everybody, well, the injury, that's part of it too. When you're going 60 minutes almost every single week, it's great for TV. I mean, it's obviously great to watch. It's exciting, but it's a toll on guys. And guys, are not getting the proper amount of rest and relaxation. And maybe when going to Denver and then going to LA and staying there, in hindsight, maybe wasn't the greatest idea. Maybe going back home, the comfort of, I'm saying your routine, your home, not dealing with a time change for an entire week, because everybody knows it takes, 7 to 10 days before you can get acclimated to that. But this team is 6-1 at home. They play really, really well at home. The defense, and look, you can say all these guys are out. You can. But I can still start a defensive line with Dalvin Tomlinson, with Myles Garrett, with Za'Darius Smith. JOK has probably maybe the most physically improved linebacker in the NFL this season. He has been fantastic. How many teams would say our safeties are down and then say, well, we're going to bring up Daron Harmon, a 3-time Super Bowl champion, 23 career interceptions in the NFL. He's going to be one of the guys that fills in. It's not a bad, I mean, yes, it's tough for these injuries, but they have done a really, really good job of finding a way to plug some of these holes, and offensively, look, I mean, you get a break. Obviously, Montez Sweat, James Hudson is probably going to be a very big matchup to watch this week. We'll see if maybe the Bears rotate Montez just a little bit more, because, you're losing somebody on the other side. And hey, you might say to Montez, which one do you like better? Because obviously, if Jaron Christian was a former Washington Commander, Montez Sweat was a former Washington Commander, hey, now I'll take Jaron Christian if I got my choice. What I'm saying? He might want to go with the guy he knows better as opposed to the mystery box and James Hudson. With the running of the game, it's just part of what you need to do to be successful this time of year. And, Kareem Hunt, he's been good in his role, which is if you need one, I'll get you 2. 3rd and 1, I'll make sure we get over the sticks. I may get you 1.1, but I'm going to get you what we need. And Pierre Strong, this is a wild card here because he's got the biggest juice in that Browns backfield, and they saw a great performance from him in Seattle. Then the Denver game, they ran this weird reverse where Moore was in the backfield. He handed it to the running back on a reverse. Terrible, terrible play calling. He fumbled it. It's almost kind of like they put him in the doghouse a little bit after that. But he's got some juice, and this guy can take the ball 35, 40 yards on any given carry. So right now there is no way to say how to scout the Browns running game, because the Browns pretty much got to try anything, because they got to find a way to get some success going there just to elongate drives, take a little bit of rest on the defense. And as good as Joe Flacco was playing to this point, Again, it is unrealistic to think that a guy is going to be 39 in January is just going to come out here and start playing on the same level of the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomeses, and I won't say Dak Prescott because he's on a whole other level this year. But it's hard to believe that you can expect, Joe Flacco to just come in here and do this for another 6, 7, 8 weeks. Just doesn't seem, realistic, honestly.
Sure. Yeah. I think for the Chicago Bears, they want to load up the box. And
just before you get to it, they're in such a great situation because the team is playing better. Are we with Fields? We have the number 1 pick. We're going to have another. I mean, Bears fans, you're still in it, and you really have an exciting offseason to look forward to. But go ahead.
No, it is. It's a really fascinating time for the team right now. You kind of get the best of both worlds.
You're getting the number 1 pick no matter what. You can make the playoffs and still get the number 1 pick. It's crazy.
But they need to win out to make the playoffs. And the Browns are like the big obstacle, the biggest of the obstacles left. I mean, obviously, Green Bay is big in its own ways, but in terms of like the best team left on the schedule, right now it's the Cleveland Browns. And I think defensively, they want to load up in the box a little bit. And like, not that you don't want to disrespect Flacco, but it's kind of it's less about saying make Joe Flacco beat you and more like saying make whoever the other quarterback is beat your secondary. Like these guys are playing really well on the back end. And if you load up the box and get after the quarterback, you can trust these guys a little bit more one-on-one. It's not always man coverage per se, but you take another guy out of coverage to blitz and get after the quarterback a little bit. It's more like one-on-one matchup sometimes, and that generally is working. Like it's not a disrespect to Amari Cooper or to David Njoku, who I think can get some yards going against this team. It's about, can you do it consistently enough, and can your quarterback stand in there under some pressure and delivers big throws downfield? Jared Goff couldn't do it last week for the Browns, and 3 weeks ago, they played Jared Goff earlier, and same kind of thing. He threw some interceptions that were uncharacteristic because it was just a little bit too much for him. And Goff's an experienced quarterback. He's seen everything. You're not surprising him per se. You're just making him uncomfortable. And I think that's where the Bears don't want Joe Flacco to just be able to sit there, rely on the running game, work some play action off of that, and really, settle in comfortably, keep him uncomfortable. And on the other end, it's the same kind of formula for Fields, where the Bears, their offensive success always hinges on, can they avoid negative plays? Can they avoid penalties that bring them backwards? Can they avoid, the handoff that goes for 1 yard or a loss? Can they avoid the sack that gets them into 2nd and long? Because then they get into, 2nd and long and 3rd and long, or 2nd and medium, 3rd and long, that kind of thing. They have trouble kind of overcoming those. But if they can just stay ahead of the sticks a little bit, go from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 6 to 3rd and 2, they can march their way down the field if they can do that consistently, and then holding on at the very end. They've blown a lot of games in the 4th quarter this year. They've let teams climb back in. Last week against the Lions was like one of the first times that they got a lead and held on to it through the end of the game. They didn't have to make some miraculous comeback attempt at the end of the 4th quarter. So it feels like a team that's kind of learning how to win, but they haven't been doing it so much that you're super confident they're going to just keep doing it and roll over everybody, especially against a playoff caliber team like the Browns that is injured. So it's almost not easy to overlook them, but it's easy to get a little confident and say, oh, this Brown team is banged up and they got Joe Flacco. Like this will be a Bears win, when it's like, no, that team's playing a lot better than they look like they might on paper with the injuries and the changes.
Oh, there's no question about it. And it just as much as I said, you bring in Deron Harmon, when you talk about a team that's played four quarterbacks. Well, normally you play 4 quarterbacks, you're competing for the top selection in the NFL draft. And your 4th quarterback is normally not somebody who's already won a Super Bowl, been in plenty of playoff games, has a hell of a resume, and is 6'5" and has a monster rocket right arm. So it's just, it's really been fortunate for the Browns the way it's worked out. It's, it doesn't change anything. The expectations are there. What I'm saying? If 4 quarterbacks are not, how many guys are injured or not? And, you could be in a lot worse situation. You still have almost a lot of your stars, truly, even though you could make up a really good roster of Browns IR and practice squad guys, the Browns' current roster right now is pretty darn good. You're in the driver's seat. You hold the top wild card spot by 1 game lead. Houston, who knows? CJ Stroud dealing with a head injury. Maybe he doesn't play this week. Who knows if he plays next week? The Jets could be interesting after that just because they play really good defense. That'll be a Thursday night, but the Browns have the advantage. The game will be in Cleveland, and they close the season with the Bengals. And they beat the Bengals with Joe Burrow. So it doesn't, for them, it's a really nice stretch here. This would be the capper and hopefully the start to a really nice continued run here in December. Get that 9th win, because any way you slice it, some of these teams that are sitting at 7 wins, there are some teams going against each other. So some teams are going to end up on the side of the road here. Some teams are going to get to 8, but some of these 7-win teams all of a sudden are going to kind of fall down a little bit in the pecking order.
Well, the big concern for the Bears is PJ Walker giving you all of the offensive secrets, and Duron Harmon was on the Bears defense earlier this year. So you're getting all the secrets from former Bears players. But Jeff, appreciate you giving us all the Browns secrets on the crossover today. Appreciate everyone who's tuned in, whether you listen to Locked On Bears or Locked On Browns. Make us your first listen each and every day. Come on back tomorrow as we get you ready for Sunday's matchup. And of course, on Monday, we'll break down everything that we saw on Sunday. So for Jeff Lloyd from Locked On Browns, I'm Lorin Cox from Locked On Bears, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.